All right, so I want to talk to you about a couple of things. So we're going to do some grammar stuff. It's going to be warm-up. And here's the difference of what you guys did, because y'all did no writing last year, right? Online, the one where you go into the website. And so that's great and all. I just don't feel like you ever actually put that stuff into practice, right? If you clicked around enough, you could get a 100. It didn't really matter what you did. So we're going to start doing this. This is Killgallon, and I am not a grammar fan. Like, I've always had a problem with grammar. I've never really understood it. It's kind of abstract to me. But years ago, when I went through a training, we started using Killgallon. In the company that I work for on the side, we use Killgallon. I saw this book, and I was like, somebody showed us this book at a training, and I was like, I know that book. I have that book on my bookshelf. And then I look, and it has my maiden name on it. I'm like, oh, that book's been on my bookshelf for a really long time, like almost 10 years it was on my bookshelf, and I never used it, right? So that's how long I've had it, and I've never known how to use it. So now we actually use it, and I want to tell you the reasons why we do this. So one, I like Killgallon, and I like this because we're working through not just subjects and verbs, we're working through appositive phrases. And what I like about Killgallon is it makes grammar not so grammar-y, right? So I think one of the things that's really intimidating is the language in grammar. So this makes it not so intimidating. One thing that we do with this is that this is going to help you to raise your level of writing. So you know the difference between a 6 and a 7 is just one thing, right? One more thing. One more thing is prose style. So by learning how to write these different types of sentences or that have these different components, you're going to be able to elevate your prose style, right? So that you can get from a 6 to a 7 easily. The other thing that we're doing is by looking at appositive phrases or looking at these skills, you're going to be able to see these things in pieces of analysis that we do. Now you can start talking about the appositive phrases that the author uses in their purpose, and that's a higher level analysis than just talking about diction. So this will kind of play twofold. All right? So I'm going to walk you through the process so that every time we have a new skill, you'll be able to do this on your own. So this is your notes page, okay? Notice that it's a notes page, but it comes from the book. So what you'll see in the notes page is you guys are going to kind of annotate a little bit as we go through. So in the top you have sample sentences, and these are just bare minimum sentences. All right, so you have an example of, it went away slowly. The land that lay stretched out before him became of vast significance. Okay, complete thoughts, good sentences, no problems. Now if you look below, you have the same sentence above, but with a part in bold. So it went away slowly, the feeling of disappointment that came sharply after the thrill that made his shoulders ache. The land that lay stretched out before him became of vast significance, a place peopled by his fancy with a new race of men sprung from himself. Okay, notice a couple of things. One, I like these sentences because they are published sentences from real authors, right? They're not like made up sentences. Okay, so let's look at what is in bold. So looking at bold, we can assume that is our appositive phrase. So looking at that without knowing much about an appositive phrase, what is the purpose of that part in bold? What is it doing? Okay, so it adds detail to what? So the feeling of disappointment that came sharply after the thrill that made his shoulders ache is talking about what? What went away. So that is the it. Right? So look at the second part. The land that lay stretched out before him became of vast significance, a place peopled by his fancy with a new race of men sprung from himself. So again, that's adding detail about what? What is a place peopled? The land. All right. So just looking at this, what can we say or guess an appositive phrase does? It adds detail about what? The subject, or at least a noun or a pronoun. Okay? So you can look at the rest of those. But let's go over to the second half of this. So the parts that are in boldface are appositives. One of the sentence parts that differentiate professional writing from student writing. They're frequently used by professional writers, but rarely by students. So what our hope is we'll use this as a warm-up. when you guys come in, and you will start to kind of work through these a little bit. When you start doing rewrites, you will start adding appositive phrases into your rewrites. When we start doing, it's going to be a little bit easier when we start doing argument, because argument is structured a little differently than a rhetorical analysis. So we are going to actually start using these types of sentences in your writing. So I should be able to see these kind of improve in your writing, okay? So here's your definition of what an appositive phrase is. Appositives are noun phrases that identify adjacent nouns or pronouns. Okay, so boys and girls, what is a noun? Thank you. A person, place, or thing. Okay, so an appositive is a noun phrase. So it is a phrase that acts as a person, place, or thing. Next thing that is really important is that identifies the adjacent noun. What does adjacent mean? Next to. So that tells you where the appositive phrase has to be. It has to be next to the noun or pronoun that it is modifying. We know what a noun is. What's a pronoun? What's a pronoun?
It's something that goes in the place of a noun.
Yes. Right? So it's he, she, it, we, our. Those are pronouns. Okay? All right. So here is, and this is the same for all of the ones that we look at. There are 3 places that they can be. They can be as a sentence opener. One of 11 brothers and sisters, Harriet was a moody, willful child. So notice, one of 11 brothers or sisters is describing whom? Okay, and also notice how we punctuate appositive phrases. So when it's an opener, we have a comma at the end. A balding, smooth-faced man, he could have been anywhere between 40 and 60. So again, that is describing he. And we have our comma. A short, round boy is 7. He took little interest in troublesome things, preferring to remain on good terms with everyone. So again, a short, round boy is describing he. Okay? So Harriet is your subject. Was is your verb. So it comes before that. He is your subject. Could have been is your verb. He is your subject. Took is your verb. Okay, so it can come as a sentence opener. And this is what I like about sentence openers, is putting it there. You guys have a tendency, and it's just habit, that we write our sentences subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb. Right? So by adding a little bit of variety in your sentences, that will raise your level of prose as well. All right, so subject-verb split can be the second place where it can be. So notice, Papa is your subject. A good, quiet man spent the last hours before our parting moving aimlessly about the yard, keeping to himself and avoiding me. So if Papa is your subject, where is your verb? Spent. Keeping and avoiding. So notice, a good, quiet man is describing whom? Papa. And because it's a subject-verb split, where are the commas going? Before and after. So notice, without the appositive, is the sentence still a complete thought? Yes, it's still a complete thought. Okay? 5. A man, a wary old pensioner with a bald, dirty head and a stained brown corduroy waistcoat appeared at the door of a small gate lodge. Okay, so a wary old pensioner describes the man. We have our comma before and our comma after. The man is your subject and appeared is your verb. Easy? Okay, flip over to the back. The final place it can be is a sentence closer. These are going to sound a little more awkward. For me, they do at least. The boy looked at them, big, black, ugly insects. So big black ugly insects is describing, yep, them. Notice the comma comes before. Hour after hour he stood there, silent, motionless, a shadow carved in ebony and moonlight. What is a shadow carved in ebony and moonlight? He. Okay, so these are your notes, right? So next time we get a new skill, you'll have the same kind of notes page, and it's not notes. I've battled over like having you like doing a PowerPoint or having you all work. This is just a copy from the book itself, so I think this will work for us. Okay. Next, what you'll have is you have your appositive practice. So I'm going to walk you through this first one because each skill we do, we have like 3 or 4 practices that we go through. So the next skill we do, you'll have the same kind of notes page. Practice 1 is always going to be the same activity. So practice 1 is always unscrambling. Okay? We have to read directions because the directions are really important because it takes you step by step. So each scrambled sentence has 1 or more appositives. Identify them. So there's your first thing you have to do is you have to identify the appositive. Then unscramble the sentence parts. So that's part 2. Unscramble the sentence parts and write out the sentence, punctuating it correctly. That is step 3. So what you cannot do is just go BCAD, right? By just putting the letters in order. That doesn't do you any good. I need to see you actually write the sentence. So I'll walk you through how I do this. So read over that list real quick. Struggled as usual. She, to maintain her calm, composed, friendly bearing, a sort of mask she wore all over her body. Okay, so where is your subject? Okay. What did she do? Struggled. There's your verb. All right. So between C and D, which one is the appositive phrase? D. So a couple of things I want you to notice. Look at how an appositive phrase is starting. A, like a thing. Does that make sense? So it's an appositive, right? So you have to look at how it starts. Okay? So now we have to think of the order. So she struggled as usual can go 1 and then 2. So what comes next? Do we think a sort of mask should split the subject and verb? She, a sort of mask she wore? No. What is a sort of mask she wore all over her body talking about? It has to be a noun. Where's the noun or the pronoun? Bearing. Bearing is the thing that she has. So, what order would this go in? She struggled as usual is 2. To maintain is 3. Okay. So now we have to rewrite the sentence. She struggled as usual to... Notice you don't have to add any more punctuation except for on the appositive phrase. Maintain her calm, comma, composed, comma, friendly bearing, comma, because we're starting our appositive phrase, right? A sort of mask she wore all over her body. Then I want you to go back and underline the appositive phrase. Okay, so let's do one more together. Number 2. So notice as we get along, 1 through 6 is pretty easy, but if you flip over to number 7 and 8, notice that we go from A through F and A through G. So they get a little more complicated as you get a little bit more experience. All right, so let's look at number 2. Read over those sentence parts, and let's see if we can figure out what goes what. What is your subject? Okay. What was the judge doing? Had stopped is your verb. Was reading is your verb. Okay. Where is your appositive phrase? Okay. An old bow-legged fellow. What is that describing? Now I got to decide where E goes. On the back of a dirty envelope. What was on the back of a dirty envelope? The notes. Yep. So, where does your appositive phrase go? Sentence opener, subject verb split, or sentence closer? Subject verb split, because it has to go close to the noun that it is describing, right? So we start with the judge. What's next? Yep, the judge, comma, an old, comma, bow-legged fellow in a pale blue sweater, comma, right? So we're going to underline that, and we have comma before and after. What comes next? Yep. Had stopped examining the animals. Notice we don't have to add any other commas, right, except for the appositive phrase. And was reading over some notes he had taken on the back of a dirty envelope. So that's what I want you to do. So, like right now, we're going to do number 3. Y'all are going to do number 3 separately. If you come in on a day and this is up, it'll be like this, and today will be like, it'll say that. Then you know to get it out. That's your warm-up. Just do that one. Quickly do it. We'll talk about it. Make sure it's in the right order. You'll have your sentence written. We'll move forward. Okay? So, 3 minutes. Figure out number 3. Go.